I spent years watching patients treat black pepper as a harmless sprinkle, and that quiet habit may be the reason their digestion stayed heavy, their energy faded after meals, and their pill organizers grew crowded. Here is the risk I want you to hear before anything else. When you rely on stale pre-ground pepper or toss it on food without thinking about timing, you can miss the very benefits you hoped for. And you might even stir up a sensitive stomach. There is a steadier way forward, and you can try it today. Choose whole peppercorns, crack a modest pinch just before you eat, and let it ride in on a real meal with a spoon of olive oil and a small pinch of turmeric so your gut has partners to help with absorption. I say this as a clinician who believes in proof over promises. The gentle heat you taste comes from piperine. And careful studies show piperine can help the body use certain nutrients more effectively when it arrives with food and fat rather than alone. That is not hype. It is physiology working in your favor. Still, every tool has two sides. Freshly cracked pepper carries aroma and volatile oils that tend to fade when pepper sits pre-ground for long stretches, which means you get less impact from the same shake. On the other hand, using a heavy hand on an empty stomach can feel harsh if you live with reflux or a tender esophagus, and that discomfort can trick you into avoiding a spice that might help when used with care. My job is to help you stack the odds toward benefit. Start with a few grains during your largest meal. Notice how your body responds over the next hours, and only then consider slowly adding more. If you use medicines that thin the blood or influence blood sugar, loop in your clinician before you change your routine so we keep safety first. Now let me explain why I am asking you to pair pepper with real food. Your tongue signals your stomach, your pancreas, and your liver every time you eat, and that quiet conversation sets off enzymes, acid, and bile that make the difference between simply filling up and truly nourishing yourself. When pepper arrives fresh and in good company, many people report a smoother meal, less bloat, and steadier energy as the day unfolds. That is the upside. You get more value from the foods you already love. You do not need fancy powders, and you stay in control of the dose. The downside is simple and honest. If you expect a miracle by morning, or if you swallow pepper without food, you could feel irritation and decide the spice is the problem, when the real issue is timing and form. I prefer a wiser path. Keep the dose small, keep it tucked inside a meal, and respect your body's feedback. This is how we act like partners with our physiology instead of fighting it. I am inviting you into a 7-day trial that favors common sense and science. Today you have the cornerstone in your hands, which is freshness, fat, and food timing. In the next part, I will show you what I look for on day 1 inside the digestive system when this routine begins, and I will teach you how to read the signals your body sends so you can adjust without fear. I once cared for a retired teacher who kept a giant tin of pre-ground pepper in his pantry. He was proud of shaking it on every plate, yet he wondered why his digestion still dragged and why his meals left him sluggish. The truth was not that pepper had no value. It was that the way he used it stripped away what mattered most. Once peppercorns are cracked and left sitting for weeks, the fragrant oils drift off, and the piperine that should have been helping his body grows weaker. He was tasting pepper, but missing the benefit. That is the danger most people never see. A spice that deserves the name black gold can turn into black dust when stored wrong. The answer is not complicated, and you can try it today. When you crack whole peppercorns fresh, and let that sprinkle arrive with food and a spoon of olive oil or another gentle fat, you give your gut a partner that can carry those compounds into the bloodstream. Add a pinch of turmeric, and you invite a second helper, because the curcumin in turmeric works hand in hand with piperine. Studies have confirmed that this pairing helps the body take in more of the vitamins and antioxidants already hiding in your dinner. It is not a miracle, it is simply physiology respected. The good side is that a fresh grind makes every meal more valuable without any extra cost, and it does so in a way your body can handle. The risk is that old powder or careless use on an empty stomach can stir up irritation, especially if you live with reflux. That retired teacher I told you about switched to a small grinder, and within a week he noticed less bloating, a calmer stomach, and more energy after lunch. He had not bought a new supplement. He had only let the pepper wake up again. That is why I keep telling my patients that form and timing can change the fate of the body. This is the foundation for the 7-day journey. When pepper arrives fresh and in company, the tongue and the stomach and the liver begin a better conversation. And on the very first day, you can start to feel the difference. In the next part, I will show you how that first 24 hours unfold inside the gut and what signals tell you the change has begun. I have sat with many older patients who told me the same story. They would finish a hearty meal, yet feel as though the food sat heavy in their belly and the strength never reached their muscles. That is the hidden danger of poor digestion. You can eat faithfully and still be undernourished if your body does not break food down properly. On the very first day of using fresh pepper the right way, I have watched that pattern begin to shift. The tongue sends a spark to the stomach, acid starts to rise, and the pancreas and the liver respond with enzymes and bile that act like tools unlocking a chest. Instead of food lying dull in the gut, nutrients are set free to cross the wall and fuel the body. Careful studies confirm that with piperine present, vitamins such as A and C and minerals like selenium are absorbed more readily. I remember a woman in her late 60s who had resigned herself to fatigue after meals. She stirred a modest grind of fresh pepper into her evening soup, and by the next morning she told me she felt lighter and steadier, with less of the bloat she had accepted as normal. It was not magic. It was her digestion finally doing its job. The benefit here is simple yet powerful. When digestion fires properly, every mouthful you already eat gives back more value, and energy begins to rise without new pills or powders. The caution is just as real. If you pour pepper carelessly or take it without food, the same acid that helps can feel harsh and trigger discomfort, especially if you live with reflux. That is why I guide people to start small, keep it with their main meal, and let the body adjust. Think of it like turning on the lights in a dim room. Suddenly you see what has been there all along, and once that light is on, the stage is set for the next surprise that unfolds on day 2, when your metabolism itself begins to shift and burn in a new way. I often hear from older patients who say they hardly eat, yet their belly never seems to shrink. That stubborn roundness is not always about willpower. It is often the sign of a metabolism that has grown too quiet. On the second day of using fresh pepper properly, that silence begins to break. The compound piperine sparks gentle heat inside the body, and that warmth stirs the engine of metabolism to burn more steadily. Careful studies have shown that within 2 days, the rate at which the body spends energy can rise by close to 1/10, and the mitochondria, those tiny power plants within each cell, begin to convert food into energy more efficiently. The upside is that people often feel sharper and more awake, and the body starts to draw on the very fat that clings to the waistline and strains the heart. I think of a man in his early 70s who dreaded afternoons because he always grew heavy-eyed after lunch. Once he began grinding pepper fresh over his meals, he told me he stayed more alert, and over several weeks his physician even noted a modest drop in his waistline, though he had changed nothing else. That is the quiet power of a metabolism nudged awake. The caution is important too. Pepper is no magic bullet. If you pour it on recklessly, you may irritate your stomach. And if you expect overnight weight loss, you will only feel let down. What it offers is balance, not extremes. Picture a campfire left to smolder. With a breath of air and a stick of fuel, it brightens again, giving steady heat. That is what a well-timed use of pepper does for the body. And that renewed fire sets the stage for the 3rd day, when your body's relationship with sugar begins to change in ways that can protect your health for years to come. I have met many older adults who tell me the same story. After lunch, they feel heavy-eyed, their focus drifts, and soon they are reaching for candy or coffee just to push through the afternoon. That is not weakness of will. It is often the signature of blood sugar soaring and then crashing. On the third day of adding fresh pepper in the right way, I often see that roller coaster begin to calm. The compound piperine helps the body use insulin more effectively, so that sugar moves into the muscles and the liver where it belongs instead of lingering in the bloodstream. Careful research also shows that piperine slows the breakdown of starches so that glucose trickles into the body more gently rather than flooding all at once. The benefit of this is felt quickly. Energy runs steadier, afternoon cravings fade, and over time the risk of sliding into type 2 diabetes is reduced. I think of a woman in her early 70s who had been told she was on the edge of diabetes. She feared more pills in her future, but longed for a way to feel stronger. After just several days of folding fresh pepper into her meals, she told me the afternoons no longer dragged her down, and months later her physician found her glucose readings had leveled out. That is the upside, a quieter rhythm that brings peace of mind. The caution is important too. Pepper is not a medicine to replace your prescribed therapy. If you already take drugs for blood sugar, you must talk with your clinician before you increase pepper, because it can make those drugs act more strongly. When used wisely inside real meals, the result is a smoother ride. I like to picture the change this way. Before, the body was on a roller coaster, shooting up and plunging down. With the right help, the ride becomes a steady train moving forward without jolts. And that steady track prepares the way for the fourth day, when clarity of mind and even sexual vitality begin to shift in surprising ways. I often remind my patients that memory loss and a fading spark in the bedroom are not just signs of getting older. They are warnings that the brain and the body need support. Too many people accept those changes as inevitable, and that resignation steals away joy long before it has to. On the fourth day of using fresh pepper correctly, I have seen something remarkable. The compound piperine crosses into the brain and encourages the release of dopamine and serotonin, the very messengers that brighten mood and sharpen focus. Patients often tell me it feels as though a heavy fog has lifted. At the same time, pepper supports the production of nitric oxide, which opens blood vessels and lets circulation reach every corner. For men, this can mean stronger and steadier performance, and for women, greater sensitivity and comfort. The advantage is not only physical, it is emotional. I recall a couple in their late 60s who confessed that he was losing focus at work, and she felt growing distance in their intimacy. After several weeks of adding fresh pepper into their meals, they came back smiling, saying they felt lighter in spirit, closer as partners, and more alive in daily routines. That is the upside. A renewal of clarity and connection that spills into every part of life. The caution is just as important. Pepper is no cure-all. If serious medical problems are ignored, disappointment will follow. Used as a companion to healthy food and proper care, it can help restore function rather than pretend to replace treatment. I like to picture it as a dimmer switch turned back up in a room that had grown too dark. Both the mind and the body respond to that new light. And with that brightness restored, we are ready for the fifth day, when the deeper fire of inflammation, the silent driver of pain and disease, begins to cool. I often tell my patients that the greatest threat to their health is not always a sudden heart attack or a dramatic illness. It is the quiet flame of chronic inflammation that smolders year after year. That hidden fire feeds arthritis, heart disease, even cancer, and it is the reason so many older adults wake up stiff, sore, and tired. On the fifth day of adding fresh pepper to meals, I have seen that flame begin to ease. The compound piperine interrupts the messengers that drive inflammation, calming overactive enzymes and lowering the body's constant alarm. Careful research shows real drops in markers like C, reactive protein, and TNF-alpha when pepper is used regularly. The benefit of this is felt in daily life. Joints move more freely, muscles ache less, and breathing becomes easier as airways relax. I think of a man in his late 60s who dreaded the stairs to his bedroom because his knees burned each night. Within days of seasoning his meals with fresh pepper, he told me he reached the top step with less stiffness, and he noticed he was not reaching for pain pills as often. That is the upside. Meaningful relief, without the stomach irritation or heart risks that can come with common anti-inflammatory drugs. The caution is important too. Pepper is not a cure for severe arthritis or advanced autoimmune conditions, and if you place all hope on it alone, you may be disappointed. What it offers is steady support, one more ally in cooling the fire within. I like to picture it as water poured gently over glowing coals. The smoke clears, the heat subsides, and the body finally has a chance to rest. That rest prepares the ground for the 6th day, when the liver, the great filter of the body, begins to show renewed strength. I often tell my patients that the liver is the most loyal, but also the most silent organ. It filters every sip of wine, every pill, and every bite of food. Yet it rarely cries out until the damage is far advanced. That quiet suffering is dangerous because it allows years of stress to build unnoticed. On the 6th day of adding fresh pepper in the right way, I have seen encouraging changes that suggest the filter is working with new strength. The compound piperine stimulates special enzymes that act like workers in a cleanup crew, tagging toxins so they can be carried safely out of the body. It also helps the body's own master defender, glutathione, protect liver cells from injury. The result is a smoother handling of the daily burden of alcohol, medication, and environmental pollutants. I think of a woman in her early 70s who depended on several prescriptions and worried each time she faced her blood tests. After several weeks of including fresh pepper with balanced meals, she came back smiling because her physician told her her liver values had improved. She said she felt lighter in spirit and even noticed her skin looking clearer. That is the upside. Pepper lending support so the liver can do the job it was built for. And studies even suggest it helps prevent fatty liver by guiding fats to be burned instead of stored. The caution is that pepper is not a cure for serious liver disease. If the filter itself is badly scarred, only medical treatment can help. Think of pepper instead as oil for the gears, keeping them moving smoothly so the machine lasts longer. With that support in place, the whole body feels cleaner and energy rises, preparing you for the 7th day, when the shield of antioxidant defense closes around every cell. Each moment of your life, your cells are bombarded by tiny sparks called free radicals. They are unstable molecules that scrape and scar tissues the way rust eats through iron. That hidden assault explains why skin loses its glow, why fatigue creeps in, and why the first cracks of heart disease and even cancer begin. On the 7th day of using fresh pepper in the right way, I have often seen the body's defenses rise. The compound piperine is itself an antioxidant, a quiet guardian that captures free radicals before they do harm. Even more, it strengthens the effect of other protective foods when paired with colorful vegetables and spices like turmeric. The advantage of this shield is felt everywhere. Blood vessels stay smoother, the heart beats under less strain, and skin holds its tone against the insults of sun and pollution. I recall a woman in her late 60s who came to me smiling after a week of meals seasoned with fresh pepper. She said her face looked brighter in the mirror, and she felt lighter on her walks, as if the years had eased their grip for a while. That is the upside. A sense of youth renewed when cells are spared constant stress. The caution is that pepper is not a fountain of youth. If you rely on it while neglecting sleep, exercise, and whole foods, the armor will crack. Think of pepper instead as one strong plate in the suit of armor that protects you. With that plate secured, the body is better prepared for the future. And with the 7th day complete, we are ready for the final step, where I will show you how to use this gift wisely and safely in daily life. I want to end this journey with the same honesty I give my patients. A small pinch of pepper can act like medicine, but if you pour it recklessly or swallow it on an empty stomach, it can turn into a burden. The wiser path is simple. Keep whole peppercorns in your kitchen, crack them fresh, and use roughly 1/4 to 1/2 of a teaspoon woven into your meals each day. Let it ride in with real food, never alone, and pair it with a spoon of healthy fat and a hint of turmeric so your body carries the gift more fully. I think of a gentleman in his 70s who agreed to try this slowly. He started with only a few grains at supper and wrote notes each night. Within a week, he told me his stomach felt calmer and he woke with more rested energy. That is the upside. A habit so small and inexpensive that it can reshape the way your body feels. The caution is just as clear. If you live with reflux, gallstones, or fragile liver health, you must tread carefully. And if you take medicine for blood sugar or blood clotting, you need your clinician's guidance, because pepper can make those drugs more powerful. This spice is not a miracle cure. It is a companion. Think of it as one voice in the choir of your health, blending with sleep, movement, food, and joy. The patients I remember most fondly were not the ones who chased secrets, but the ones who embraced steady steps. Your own steady step can be as small as the twist of a grinder at your dinner table. Begin tonight, listen to your body, and let the days unfold. Sometimes the doorway to lasting change is no bigger than a pinch of spice resting in your palm.